All right, guys, you've made it to the last lesson, lesson 12, marriage and partnerships. How excited are you to be here in the last lesson to get to hear and know really how to get your spouse on board? That's what this is, marriage and partnership. So before this lesson, oh, I should share my screen, shouldn't I? Before this lesson, you should have a few things. You should have a consultation scheduled with an insurance broker or two. Okay. You should have that on your schedule. Then you should also have a completed chart or a completed chart to help you plan the kind of insurance you need to review or secure. All right. So I want to make sure that you have the right insurance going forward so that catastrophes are covered, so that your financial liability is lower than it otherwise should have. And please remember to take any questions to your group financial coaching sessions. You get 2 per month for the 6-month subscription. At this point, you've done the easy work and you've done the hard work. You're following a budget. You're celebrating your successes. You're managing your expenses, big and small. And you might even be working an extra job or have started a side hustle. You're making amazing progress. You are legitimately changing your life. Okay. And now it's time to make sure that money doesn't ruin the most important relationship of your life. From this moment on, just so you know, from this moment on, I'll be using the term spouse only because I usually talk to married couples. Sometimes I don't, but that's not the topic for this lesson. Instead, we'll be discussing managing money with your life partner, who I'm going to call your spouse because I need to call them something. So, the most common question I get from couples is, should we combine our finances, or how should we combine our finances? We'll get to that. We'll kind of answer this question. It's not an easy thing to answer. And as you've probably already realized, I want to make sure everyone is doing what is right for them. And combining your finances isn't always the right choice. Please don't crucify me over that answer. Some would. If you have a spouse who isn't honest with their finances or doesn't want to be involved, it might be better not to combine your finances. If you're both on the same page and you're honest with each other and you're going forward together, which is what this lesson is about, then it's usually a good idea to combine your finances for simplicity's sake. Okay. But we'll get to that. Most of this lesson is about getting your spouse on the same page so you can take what you're doing with your finances and do it together. We're going to get deep into this. Okay. But that's jumping ahead. Most of this lesson is about, we're going to touch on your family money management methods, how your history affects you now, and the first steps to getting on the same page. Talking about combining your finances is getting ahead because I don't know you. I don't know your situation, but we're going to figure out how to know that. Okay. You are bound to have some disagreements because you and your spouse see money a different way. When my husband and I first got married, I had debt and he didn't have any except for our mortgage. Okay. And he literally didn't have debt ever except for a mortgage. He didn't even have a credit card. That made the way that he had 0 credit score, by the way, before the mortgage. That made the way we counted money, the way we planned, and the way we saw the future completely different from each other. It was completely different. See, he had never felt the desperation of debt. He didn't know what it was like to be worried about money, to try to figure out if you'll have bread with your peanut butter this meal or next meal. He didn't ever worry about money. And I'll be honest, when we were first married, I resented that a little bit, but it made us a good team because we came to the marriage with different perspectives. Now, I'm not conflict avoidant, and he is. He had to remind me occasionally that we were on the same team and to stop treating him like we weren't on the same team. We weren't against each other. We were not competing. We were on the same team. Now, we weren't on the same page, but we were on the same team. Do you get the difference? Let's talk about teams for a hot minute. What's the best team you've been on? Most of the time when I ask this question, I'll hear about a football team, a softball team, a volleyball or chess team, mathletes or debate. And those are all great. But also think outside the box to maybe a work team that you've been on or a planning team for putting together an event. Think about the best team you've ever been on. I've heard about all kinds of teams. Okay. I was on an EMS team working on an ambulance. I was on a pricing team at work at one point. Think of the best team you've ever been on and really visualize it. Think about the people and who you liked the most. What made that team special? Was it your common goal? Was it the people? Did you just have a great rapport? Did you goof off? What did you like about that team? How did you feel while you were on the team? And what made that team so amazing? Okay. Teams are groups of 2 or more people with different skills, experiences, and achievements that try to achieve a common goal. The best teams I've been on and heard of, and I've heard about a lot of teams now, are made up of people who all have different experiences and skills, and they bring them, they feel safe to bring them to the table. They communicate, they talk about the future together, and they achieve the future they want together, okay? They work together. They work together, guys, each doing different things and checking in with each other so that they can all get to where they want to be. There's usually a strategy to that team's goal. They think it through together and they create it together and then they work together. Okay. That's the team. That's the best teams now. The best teams I've heard of, they also had fun together. They laughed, they go out, they supported each other when things got hard. They pulled each other up and encouraged each other. They do funny, sometimes stupid things to make each other's laugh. It's fun being on a team like that, even if the work is hard, isn't it? Because it makes all the hard work fun. Your marriage should be the best team you've ever been on. Your marriage should be that team. It should be the best team. And it still can be, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Remember, the grass is greener where you water it. So let's water it. Before you understand each other, you need to understand yourself. Okay. So this might, just so you know, this might get a little bit uncomfortable. We're about to hit some uncomfortable areas. When I go through this in coaching, people tend to cry. Heck, I cry. When they cry, I cry. This stuff is hard. It's personal. And if you need a moment to prepare, please go ahead and pause, get yourself a cup of tea or something, and then continue. The lesson is hard, but it's so worth it. So like I alluded to earlier, this is, I'm not sure if I talked about it earlier, but this lesson, it's a quicker crash course than I have. If you want a kinder course on money and marriage, I actually have a 10-lesson course that will bring you and your spouse together around a money plan. So it builds that foundation and understanding in a fun and intuitive way that will help you get to building a budget together. So if you're going through this by yourself and your spouse isn't here with you, please consider taking that money and marriage course to bring your spouse along. Okay. This is a quick crash course and it won't have the same impact, but it'll get you going, even if you're watching this separately. So anyway, let's get started. Let's talk about the family you came from. Did your parents talk about money or did they keep quiet about money? Did your parents seem to have enough money or did they seem to have lots of times where they had to stretch a dime? Okay. There are 2 different kinds of communication methods. There's open and then there's closed. Open means your parents talked about money at the dinner table. You know, even if they were struggling, money was a topic of conversation. You heard them talk about it. They didn't shy away from it. So if that sounds like you probably know it. Closed means your parents didn't talk about money in front of you. All right. They didn't teach you anything about money and they didn't want you to know their financial situation. They might have talked about money and spending with each other behind closed doors, but you didn't know about it because they didn't talk about money in front of you. That's closed. So here's a couple questions. Did you hear your parents talk about money? Did they discuss it at the dinner table? Did you discuss giving, saving, and spending with your parents? If the answer was no to a lot of those, it's probably closed. If the answer is yes, then you probably came from an open household. Now let's move into unstable versus secure. Okay, this is a different way to measure this. Measure your family money management methods. Unstable means your family lived paycheck to paycheck, or they didn't have a plan for their finances, basically. This usually looked like parents who sometimes spent a lot of money at one point and splurged. And then at other times, they wouldn't spend money like almost at all, okay, if they could help it. Secure, on the other hand, it means your family followed a budget and gave every dollar a place to go. They had a plan for their financial future, whether they talked about it or not. Okay, this being secure didn't mean that they were open. They could have been closed and secure. But secure families, they didn't they were usually pretty even in their spending. They didn't like splurge much unless they planned for it. Okay, they had to plan for it. And they also didn't eat ramen noodles for days or even months and years. Okay. So here's some questions to figure out whether your parents were unstable or whether they were secure. Did your parents ever try to hide purchases from each other? If yes, that's a sign of an unstable household. Were your parents savers or spenders? Maybe that's different depending on the time of the month or how close to payday it was. They seemed like spenders at one point in the month and savers throughout the rest of the month. That's a sign it was unstable. And how did it feel in your house when your parents had to pay bills or when you went grocery shopping? Was it really tense? If it was tense, that's a sign of an unstable house. If it wasn't tense and it was fine, then that's the sign of a secure house. Could you predict how they'd respond when you asked for something? If you can't predict how they'd respond, that's the sign of an unstable house. If you could predict it, then it's more of the sign of a secure house because it was predictable. They had a plan and you could gather that. So here's kind of how it looks. Okay, let's talk about these 4 family money management methods. You see there's closed, there's open, there's secure, there's unstable here. We're talking about these so you can have a framework for understanding yourself and your spouse. All right. These 4 types of ways to manage your finances are the majority of what I see out there. They're closed and unstable, closed and secure, open and unstable, and open and secure. So look at this chart and figure out where you fall here. What kind of family did you come from? There's nothing to be ashamed about here if you're going through this. So my husband, he came from a closed and secure family. They worked hard. They paid for their kids' college education. They helped their kids out, but they weren't open about discussing money until my husband, who was the youngest of 4 kids, was in his 30s. Okay. So my in-laws went from closed and secure to open and secure. And they weren't super open, just a little bit open. My family, okay, my family on the other hand, was somewhere between closed and unstable and to open and unstable. So both of my parents were spenders. They said things like, God always provides, so why do we need a plan for the future? And don't get me wrong, God does always provide, but he also provides us with wisdom and a brain to create a plan for the future. Okay. You don't test God. I know now how wrong it was that my parents said that. Having faith doesn't let you off the hook for financial planning, all right? Because God also calls us to be wise. My mother was open and unstable in financial management. My father was closed and unstable, meaning he didn't have a financial plan. So neither of them had a financial plan. My mom would talk about it, my dad wouldn't. They spent what they had money when they had money flowing in. And at times we ate a lot of ramen. So my parents divorced and money was a big issue there. Okay. They didn't have a cushion. They had no emergency fund and things went south. And those were some really lean years. If you've been watching this course, doing this course from beginning to end, then you know that we had some pretty lean years. Okay. And a few years after the divorce, my father remarried and my family's situation changed. I was in college by then, and my family money management method changed from closed and unstable to closed and secure. So my dad actually married a planner, not a financial planner, but she was just really, really good at planning things. So she had a good financial plan and still manages it all. Okay. So I got to experience 3 of these blocks. I got to experience closed and unstable, open and unstable, and closed and secure. And it had a huge effect on me. It changed how I looked at money and it changed how I managed money. Okay. The way we grow up seeing our parents relate to money can affect us for the rest of our lives if we're not careful and if we don't work on it. When I meet people from any of these buckets, they tend to feel these ways, okay, in here, this way about money. All right. In the closed and unstable group, they're stressed and anxious because their parents were. They grew up embarrassed about their living conditions sometimes. All right. Unsure about what their parents can and can't afford. They're insecure about what tomorrow looks like. In the closed and secure group, they're generally oblivious about their family finances until they're teenagers or even adults. Okay. They didn't hear anything about it and they didn't have a reason to worry because the emotions weren't there. The room wasn't charged. Okay. As teens, they start to wake up about money and they start feeling embarrassed because they don't know much about handling money and they think they know less than their peers. They can also be anxious about using money because they don't know if they're doing it right or not, that right way. And it can be a hard thing to overcome. So a lot of these clients, when I find somebody from a closed and secure household, they're anxious about making the right choices. And that anxiety causes them to not make the right money moves because they don't want to move it at all. Okay. It can be a hard thing to overcome. In the open and unstable group, they're usually stressed and anxious about money because their parents were. Okay. They saw that. And they grew up embarrassed about their living conditions because at times, maybe their parents talked about financial problems in front of their friends, and it was embarrassing. These are your friends who didn't want to have anyone over to their house or to their apartment. Okay. It was too embarrassing for them. As adults, they can be afraid or angry when money discussions come up. Afraid, fearful, angry. Okay. Because they saw the fights about spending and they saw what it did to their families. It's usually not good. Okay. Their families usually didn't go from open and unstable to open and secure. They stayed in open, unstable, and sometimes they broke apart. Okay. And when the kids from families like this are left alone, they can feel insecure and overwhelmed about the thought of planning for the future because money is emotional and what they learned about money is tied to these emotions of stress and anxiety and insecurity. So money was a hot button issue in their house and they just don't want to go near it. Okay. Then you have your friends over here in the open and secure bucket. Okay. This is the kind of family my husband and I are building for our kids. When I meet people whose parents talked about money and taught them about money, saw money as a tool and followed their plan, these kids grew up confident that they'll always have enough and or always find a way to get enough. Okay. They're generous with what they have. They're not concerned. They're calm and comfortable in conversations about money. It's just a tool. Why is it taboo? They're curious about investing and how to build wealth. Okay. They just want to do it well. And they're curious and happy to read and discuss. And they manage their financial risks pretty well, usually. I don't meet many people like this, but only because of the nature of my job. They're out there, I promise. You can build this kind of home too. You can change to be open and secure. You're already doing it by taking this course. So which one of these sounds like you? Which one resonates with how you feel about money and how you grew up feeling about money? What part of this sounds like your spouse? The reason we're digging through your past and your spouse's past is to build a better future together. Knowing yourself and knowing your spouse's history can help you build a better relationship together. Remember, your marriage should be the best team you've ever been on. Figuring out our family money histories was one of the first constructive conversations my husband and I had around money. And it's the most impactful lesson in my money and marriage course. That's why we're focusing on this. I kind of pulled it out and we're focusing on it. Okay. When I learned this stuff, I was trying to understand him, my husband, and where he was coming from. I was also trying to help him understand me and why I was so nervous and anxious about our financial future. I wanted him to be on my side. I wanted him to see money the way I did. Okay. And by discussing our family money histories, I actually got more than I was looking for. I saw that there was a different way to look at money, and I saw his insecurities. He didn't know if he was doing it right. I saw how he thought about money, and he saw how I thought about money. He realized what I held to be important, and I realized what he held to be important. In short, like, I saw his heart and he saw mine, and we became a lot more of a team during those discussions. We made choices after that to do different things than our parents did. So decide together if you want to be open or closed, unstable or secure. The first step is to commit. It's to commit to building a better future together, to commit to open communication, commit to talking about money, scheduling discussions, deciding together what goes in the budget, and keeping each other on track. Decide to transform your money management from unstable to secure. Decide to talk about money with your kids if you have or will have any. Okay. A commitment goes a long way. You made a commitment to take this course. Your spouse may or may not be here. I know how that goes. If your spouse isn't here right now, then start with the second step with him or her. Start the second step with them. So the second step here is to dream together, to think about the life you want to have together in the future. We did this together early on the course. Remember, you made a vision and you set goals. I just want you to do that first part with your spouse. Let them drive. And I'm going to give you a step-by-step how to do it. Okay. I'm not leaving you hanging here. I know a lot of different people will say, have a dreaming session. Here's how to do it. Okay. Number one, ask your spouse what they'd like to do in retirement. And if they laugh, really pursue it. Okay. What do you want to do in retirement? Really, what do you want it to look like? If you could retire, what would you want it to look like? And then number two, and this is a separate discussion, okay? Second discussion, not the same discussion. This is important. Second discussion. Ask your spouse what their favorite vacation looks like, and if they'd like to do that more in retirement. Okay, it kind of gets them thinking that, okay, well, you're thinking about this and you're wondering what they want. So first discussion, ask your spouse what they'd like to do in retirement. Then second discussion, ask your spouse what their favorite vacation looks like and if they'd like to do that more in retirement. Now, third discussion, get them to really detail out what they love in retirement. So you've got their brains kind of thinking about it. Now they might be dreaming about it. So get them to detail it out so you can see it, taste it, touch it, hear it, and smell it. Who will you surround yourself with? What foods will you eat? Where will you be located? What hobbies will you do? When do they want this to happen? This discussion is really good over dinner. Okay, this is a fun one to have. And then that's it. Don't talk about your money yet. All right, that's your dreaming session. It's 3 separate discussions at 3 separate times on 3 separate days. Okay, don't try to make this about money. It's not a reality to your spouse yet. They're probably not thinking about how to get there. All right. The very next step here is to model it out with a budget. So now you have your spouse's retirement dream. Make sure to hold some additional sessions to talk through what your retirements would look like together. So you have his or hers, you have yours, give and take, be realistic and listen well. If your spouse wants to go fishing a lot and you'd like to be around your grandkids, then work that in together. It's not an either or, but an and, okay? Then model it out. How much money would it take to live like that? How much money do you need to live like that? How possible is it? Would it take What would it take to make it a reality, right? And I'll tell you what, debt starts looking really bad when it's costing you the retirement you want, when it's making you work until you're 75 or 80. Okay. Debt starts to look really bad then. But if you pay off that debt, well, you can build a retirement egg in about 15 years. I'm serious. That's about how long building a modest retirement takes from a modest income. Okay. Not an extravagant. I mean, you're not going to be like one of the Kardashians, but I mean, unless you have a great income, but a modest retirement from a modest income takes about 15 years to build. Okay. Then come back to the discussion within. I was thinking about how to make this a reality. I'd love to retire with you one day. Do you want to work on this together? Now, you already have the budget to pay off debt. You have Save Your Street steps to financial freedom. You know what it will take to be debt free. You've gone through the rest of this course. Your spouse knows you care, and he or she wants to make his or her dreams a reality. Okay. So go through the handouts with your spouse. Go through the course again if you want to, this time with your spouse, if you're not together already, guys. Now you're working toward a common goal. You can have discussions with him or her about all of this. I know it helps. I've done this with people. I've seen it bring couples together over and over. I've seen couples go from almost divorced to now a team, like the team they were meant to be, the best team they've ever been on. And if you need more help going through those discussions, I do have that whole course dedicated to this called Money and Marriage. It's about understanding each other, building a financial plan together, figuring out who does what, building strong routines and habits that will serve you well throughout your entire marriage and your life, understanding how to love one another with your financial choices. Okay. I just want to say I'm excited for you and your spouse. And I know you can build a better future together as a team. So here's some quick tips for budgeting together. Number one, align on your goals. Budgeting follows the review, decide, review process. You need to agree on goals before you can do this process. So you have to agree on those goals, or you're just going to have an argument. Okay. Number two, bring your budget to the table and ask your spouse to change something. That works. All right. Ask them to do something. And then be open to the changes. You might want to spend less in order to pay off debt quickly, but your spouse might feel a little like straitjacketed, stifled. Okay. And just know you can do it. This is one of the most intimidating processes clients of mine go through. It's tough, but I've seen hundreds of people do it anyway. I know you can be one of them. I know it's so worth it. You can do it. Do you see now why I couldn't answer the question of whether or not to combine your finances? I don't know your specific financial situation. It depends on your family money management methods, your family history. It depends on how you view money now. It depends on your risks and what risks you're willing to work through and at which stage with your spouse or not. It's something that you'll have to talk through with your spouse. I've seen it work both ways. Okay. As long as communication remains open and strong, as long as you commit to being open in terms of your communication. Okay, let's wrap this lesson up. Let's review what we covered in this session. We covered your family money management methods. We covered how your history affects your outlook. And we covered the first steps to bringing your spouse to the table on financial matters. Here's your homework. Last homework. If this is the last video you're watching, this is the last homework. Dream with your spouse. Ask your spouse about the retirement they'd love to have. Dig deep and find out the specifics. Number two, download the Family Money Management Methods handout. Think through your family and ask your spouse about his or her family. Which quadrant did your family fall into more than the others? And then number three, bring your spouse to the budget table. Bring the budget, ask your spouse to change it, and then work together to find a budget that works for your whole family, not just you. This lesson is about getting on the same financial page as your spouse. It's the first step there. And it's one of the most worthwhile activities you can do. If you need help or have questions, please join the group financial coaching sessions. We're here to help you get out of debt for good. Okay. And we're excited to see you there. That's it. The course is over. This is the last lesson. Celebrate because this is a milestone. All right. I will see you in group financial coaching.